I'd like to welcome you to the new Illumination Leadership Light Shine Forth Now. This is a virtual conversational training conference, and this is with the new Leadership Light Illuminators, AliNICOLE, and that's me, and Gina, Gardiner, and Brenda, Jacobson. And I must say that this is such an exciting time, and we are pleased to bring you really this timely experience to help you level up your leadership light and ultimately be able to shine forth. I just want to mention that you need to definitely make sure that you have note-taking materials so that you can jot down all the golden nuggets and some of the higher illumination aha moments, because I'm sure that you'll have those during this experience. Before we get started and I bring forth Gina and Brenda, I actually want to open up with sharing from part of a Facebook post that I published a while back, because I really feel that it's extremely relevant to where we're going to go today and really just set the tone and segue into the grander experience that we have created for you. So this is all about distinctions and extinctions as it relates to leadership. And so I'm going to read just part of this post. So these are the times of distinction and extinction as it relates to true new illumination lighthouse leadership and false lighthouse leadership. And it's time to demonstrate your distinction. So think for a moment. How are you setting yourself apart during this time to shine your leadership light? So I want you to think about that for a moment before I continue. Just think about, how are you setting yourself apart during this time to shine your leadership light? So are you shining the light on solutions or trying to shine the light on what you believe is wrong with others and or the world? So think about that as well. So are you shining the light on solutions during this time, or trying to shine the light on what you believe is wrong with others, to be other leaders or so, or just things in the world in general? So the latter supports the lower ego's agenda, okay, and causes others to fall into the trap of a false light leadership calling. See, lighthouses shine in darkness. They don't shine the light on the darkness. And this is the same with true lighthouse leadership. Shining in the right way will automatically expose the darkness without one having to go out of their way or lose their alignment in order to make a point to be right. Illumination within itself will bring forth the annihilation of misaligned activity. The larger light will dispel the darkness. When the sun comes out, the dark goes away. So I want everyone to take a nice deep breath, please. So I want to segue into where we're going to go today, because leading up to this conference experience, we actually provided several pre-calls that focused on helping leaders to make the new Illuminate lighthouse leadership shift, if you will, and really appeal to those who were following what I have termed as the false light leadership callings. And actually, we'll have links below in the description of those calls. And during this conference, though, we're actually going to be focusing on the leader who is emerging into their new illumination roles, and really how to best prepare them for this level of really what I call significance in terms of their signature calling. Because there are different levels of calling, but we really want to be able to focus on or bring illumination to what is going to be the signature calling, at least in the present. So the primary objective really during this experience is to help you be able to clarify your, let's say, your illuminate calling, and it goes back to just this phase, of the journey. But also, this is going to be about comprehending the next levels of the new light or lighthouse leadership position, and be able to provide you with the confidence and also the courageousness to be able to step forward and to shine forth, because that's what this is all about, is becoming these new illuminate leaders so that you can ultimately be able to shine this new light forth. And we are going to talk about the importance of the new light before we actually get into some of the content that we're going to share today. I also want to share that within the description, you're going to learn more about the three of us and also how we can serve you after this experience. And there will also be some information about our new Illuminate Leadership Voices Conference series that's going to be coming up. So definitely excited about that. So also, before I actually bring Gina and Brenda forward, I'm going to go ahead and share what our conference course content is going to be. So we are going to have an opening conversation, the three of us, and it really is going to be around the importance of the new light. And then I'm going to provide an opening training that's called New Leadership Light on Damascus Road, and it's inspired by my publication with that same title. And then after I provide the opening training, we're going to come back together and have a collective conversation. And then we are going to hear an awesome mini talk from Brenda, and it's going to be on awakening your new luminous leadership light and unleashing your magic in the world. And this is really all about the new world. So very excited to hear about this. And then we're going to come back together and have a collective conversation. And then we're going to hear from the marvelous Gina. And she is going to share about the Enlightened Soul Mission Blueprint of a New Illumination Leader. And that's going to be her mini talk. And so very excited about all of this because it's so timely, extremely relevant, and not only relevant, it is required for this time. And so after Gina shares, we are going to come back and have a collective conversation around her talk as well. And then I'm going to provide sort of a mini keynote, and the title of it is Rise, Lead, and Shine Forth as a New Illuminate Leader. And so looking forward to being able to share that message and what will come up during that time that I bring that forth. And then we'll come back together and have another collective conversation. And then I'm going to share about some next level opportunities. And we'll have those opportunities also listed within the description. Then we'll have some closing words from each of us. And then the wonderful Gina will conclude us. So this is where we're taking you today. And so we're extremely excited and glad for you to be a part of this experience. So at this moment, I want to welcome Gina. Gina, thank you for being here for this experience.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. I am too. And Brenda, welcome. Definitely looking forward to Brenda being able to share.
Yep. Take myself off mute. I'm really looking forward to participating with you. These trainings are always both a great time to teach and a great time to learn.
I agree wholeheartedly. It is all about being able to leverage both, of being able to be the leader who's providing the context, but at the same time, being in the receptive mode to always be learning, because that's what it's all about. We're constantly leveling up our light as we are leading, others in their higher illumination. So yeah, that's always great. Always great. And again, I just want to thank you both. We've been doing these trainings and leading up to this particular experience that, again, we're very excited, about this. So before we start moving into the outline really of what I talked about, what we're going to cover, I would really love to sort of have this opening conversation about the importance of of new leadership light and being able to make some distinctions, in terms of what that looks and feels like. And it will be different, for each person, for each leader. But I do believe that there are some primary context or maybe a core context, to this experience. And I believe that it's important to actually shine the light, if you will, on this particular aspect, is because over the years, we hear a lot about lighthouse leadership and people leading and being the light for others. But what we've learned and observed, over time is that there are a lot of great leaders and they are doing, some very signature things and have made a tremendous mark, in the leadership history and have empowered others. But what we also have come to realize is that, but they are, a lot of them still leading in a very traditional way. Even the innovative ways or methods that they've been trying to leverage are still not really, suitable, if you will, for the greater expansion. And it has ultimately not really prepared individuals and other leaders for the actual new world that has been emerging. So there's been this continuation of a new and improved, type of structure, but not ultimately, as you've all heard me teach in other trainings, have not ultimately brought a metamorphosis experience to take people from that caterpillar into an actual new entity as a butterfly. And so because we haven't had that, there's a lot of activity that has been going on for quite some time that, again, is developing leaders and but still developing them. And then they're developing others, in ways that still are not going to be what is required for the new world, the metamorphosized, evolutionized world. So let's have some conversation, because we've all done some work together in terms of being able to be the new light and really being able to lead the new way. So I would love to hear, Gina, I'll start with you. I would love to hear from you about the importance of the newer light context and why we definitely people need to be learning what that new light is.
I think it's very easy for the old to just be recreated in new clothing.
Yes.
That it's actually more of the same. And I think the big thing is that we are now moving into a different dimension.
Right.
And in order to lead in that dimension, the leaders need to recognize that this is something entirely new. There are skills and experience and expertise that will be useful along this journey.
Yes.
But if you do the same thing, you'll get the same thing. And this is about having the courage, a bit like the travelers in the Middle Ages when they thought the world was flat.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some brave souls who needed to leave the coastline, even though they thought they were going to drop off the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, this is the modern day equivalent of that we are moving into an entirely new way of being, which requires a new way of leading, and for leaders to be courageous enough to step out into the unknown and to actually develop new ways of being, and to realize that this is not a once and it's done. As I'll say in my talk, this is an ongoing iteration. You'll move, you'll expand, that'll settle, you'll move and expand, and that'll settle. And so this is about a way of being. It's not a doing thing, it's a being thing.
Right, absolutely. Well stated. That was great. I loved how you shared that. So Brenda, let's hear from you.
I just think that we're at this absolutely grand precipice of time for leaders to actually step into their own magic, to their own authenticity, and lead from the core of who they are, rather than from what they've been taught from others on the systems and what makes a good leader. We've always had that imposed on us instead of really going inside and knowing how we want to lead as an individual and coming from that place. And a lot of that is intuition, is really tapping into that inner voice, that inner guide that we have. Albert Einstein had a quote that said, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind a faithful servant." And we have become a society that has forgotten, that has honored the servant and forgotten the gift. And I think this is the time for us to reclaim that gift and really turn the tables so that that rational, logical process that we've been so attached to in the past becomes a way of serving us. We don't throw it out, but it becomes secondary to what we know from deep within, and we guide from that light that shines from within us going forward. And we use that rational process to validate, to support us in the way that we're moving forward, not to dictate the path that we're moving forward on. So I think that I think it's going to be a beautiful world that evolves out of that, using a lot more of that feminine flow, that empathy, compassion. That's what comes when you tap into that authenticity, that truth of who you are. Those are very natural elements for people.
Oh, absolutely. And the newer context around those, and I know you'll, speak probably more to that, during your talk. But yeah, because that is very important, and being able to understand, for others to understand the distinctions in terms of newer vibrations to what would seem like common context, things that there's the progression, there's the evolution, exactly, what you have stated. And then just to go back to even what Gina was talking about, just in terms of understanding that we are in these newer times, and the perception at one point, as you used, the analogy about the earth, and the distinctions there of what the perceptions were at one time about the flat earth theory, and then discovering that there's something new, and that quote unquote truth that was presented, in a sense, in fact was not the truth that others needed to really be subscribing to. And so we find that to be still true, during these times, that there's a lot of perceptions around what actually has been true as it relates to leadership and the way that the world should emerge and should evolve. So there's been a lot of templates that have been given, but ultimately has not really connected people to their unique individuality. And so that's something obviously today that we will be bringing forth, is being able to shine the light on that, so that others can really be able to shine forth, in their uniqueness. But I thought it was really important to set the tone with talking about this and how important it is. And so what we'll demonstrate today, even vibrationally, if you will, is really the opportunity for them to see the new light demonstration. So with that being said, I suppose we could move forward to really getting into our core context. So should I go ahead and proceed with the opening training, or do you all want to add anything else before we move forward?
No, I think go straight to training. Yeah.
Okay, well, great. And who knows, this may turn into a little interactive session at some point. We'll just see how it goes. So as I mentioned, that I would be sharing about new leadership light on Damascus Road. And it's really important during this time that we really show up really as both the anchor and the lighthouse. And I want to really talk about this, because this is how leaders are going to have to really position themselves. We really need to be grounded or have this solid anchoring in our leadership. And of course, we're talking about the new context, of it, because those who are lighting the shore, so to speak, and starting to lead the new way are really going to have to find themselves, well, I shouldn't say find themselves, but intentionally position themselves in this newer grounded format, if you will. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit from one of my works that's really around being anchored as a new lighthouse leader. And within that context, I highly emphasize that if you see leaders and influencers, and I actually alluded to this, earlier, even from the Facebook post, if you see influencers and they're focusing so much on the darkness that's happening in the world, and they're really working overtime to shine the light on that darkness, then you'll know that they aren't actually really part of the new light or new lighthouse leadership agenda. Because new illumination lighthouse leaders, I feel like I need to provide a little context, to this. What their best position is, or the position that they take, if you will, is really to stand or have that anchoring, as the light, and be able to shine this new light. And they're broadcasting what is emerging for the newer context, which would not be focusing on the what's passing away, and I'm sure that Gina and Brenda definitely, agree with this, because we've done, several trainings and had other conversations, even as it relates to this context. Because the thing about it is, during this time, the newer energy takes its position to lead and start really being the anchorers, if you will, of solutions, and really being anchored in solutions themselves, and really not the agendas that serve the lower ego. So during this time, this is what I'm speaking to the masses in terms of these new Illuminate leaders and the ones who are emerging, is that your primary position is really to be anchored in the solutions. One of my coined terms is about being a solution catalyst versus a problem solver and trying to fix problems. And so when you're anchored in solutions, you're going to be able to shine the light in a higher illuminate way. And you'll be lighting the way and leading by your grounded position, versus biases or this need to be right type of agenda. So you don't really want to operate in any of that, because when you stand as your true light, and we're going to get into talking more about how you discover that. When you stand in your true light and you take this position in terms of being anchored in solutions, then trust me, others will come to your shore. And when they come to your shore, they're going to feel empowered. But not only are they going to feel empowered, they're also going to feel safe. And it goes beyond that, because the experience that you will be creating, for them is exactly what they need to embrace and embody to be able to, to move forward. And from this context is where they will be ready to lead and really have their lives change in such a way that it's going to be amazing. It's something, Brenda has alluded to in several of the talks that we've had about this brilliant new world and this brilliant new experience. And so these are individuals who are emerging during this time, and you are those leaders who are emerging during this time to have your lives changed and transformed. And as you're coming to, if you will, sort of a shore of ours today, really just to level up your own shore, and so that others too can come and be able to come to where you are and be the recipients, if you will, of your new light. And from there, you're going to be able to show others the way. So that's something that's really, really, important. But before you can be effective in doing what I've just mentioned, is that you must first become aware of your own call to Damascus Road and what that will be. And so I'm going to provide a little bit of context around that. I'm sure most are familiar with the story that comes out of the book of Acts, but the phrase Damascus Road, or the experience, is sort of a phrase that's used to describe, I guess the best way to put it is some type of dramatic conversion experience. And that's what the Apostle Paul had experienced. And again, you can find that in the book of Acts. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about that as I continue within sharing about this. So, but I want to actually talk about what a Damascus Road experience is, sort of what that entails. I know I kind of gave a generalization, but the road to Damascus, in a sense, because it's like a journey leading up to that point. But these experiences are those which I would say that a person, they have a sudden insight or some type of, it's an awakening in experience. And these insights, they really radically change and shift the beliefs of an individual. And this is very important, within in leadership. And the original description, so to speak, comes from the Bible. And this is used mainly in a spiritual context, but I just also want to say that it's often refers to really just any type of sudden conversion. And so even if it's not a spiritual experience, it's just a wake-up call, to whatever the context is that one would need to make a shift and subscribe to. So I want to emphasize just a few things, because within my publication, which is called New Leadership Light on Damascus Road, and it is an Illuminate Awakening Journey Journal for repositioning your leadership light, mission, and agenda. And within the publication, I share about the different experiences that often occur at this level of the journey, and why every leader, for sure, at some point will find themselves on Damascus Road. And they'll either be a Saul leader, which was what the Apostle Paul was, before he had his conversion experience, or there'll be an Ananias leader, or even a newly converted Apostle Paul, so to speak. So let me just give some context to kind of these three dimensions in a sense of leaders. So the Saul leader is the zealous leader who really, this may sound a little weird or funny, but in a self-induced way, they have allowed themselves to be blinded. And it really is a self-induced ignorance, type of framework. And within this context, it's all about the lower ego's agenda. And this ultimately leads to operating in what I've been talking about in terms of false leadership light calling. And this type of leadership will have sort of these extreme, it's when I say self-induced, I'm not kidding. And Brenda and Gina, they both have heard me speak on the self-induced ignorance, context. It's really actually, it's really sad. I'm going to be honest. It's really sad, but that's not really where I want to shine the light. Today, I just really want to make some distinctions here, just so you know the types of leaders that, come upon the Damascus Road experience. And so when they actually do have their extreme awakening experience, because that's what happens when they meet up with the Damascus Road, they then start to shift into the truth of the new illumination light leadership, context. But prior to that, they've had the activity that I've been mentioning about really allowing themselves, to be blinded. So again, on the Damascus Road experience, what will happen is this great light will shine upon them. That's the awakening. And what actually happened in Saul's case was that light in this context was that he saw the light of Jesus, the light of Christ. And then after he had this vision, so to speak, because that's what was occurring, he was without 3 days. I mean, 3 days he was blind. So he was without sight, for 3 days. And you think about that now, it's interesting where you were already blinded, right? before even getting to that point. And then you're hit with the light of truth to start coming into that understanding. And then boom, you are without sight again. And I think it's very significant why this happens, why it takes place. It's because sometimes when you have been blinded and you come into a certain awareness around truth, then you almost have to be kind of blinded once more so that your eyes can be opened, to a greater expansion. Or you just have to now sit in this place so that you can allow your blind spot at that point to bring the inner illumination, to you before you actually can move on to have the grander experience. So what actually happened, and you can actually find this in Acts chapter 9, verse 9. But after this 3-day experience of him being blinded, then the Spirit of Christ then sent Ananias to heal him and to teach him about the gospel. So that was the context during that time. But we are talking in this context about the leadership, experience. So in this case, this experience for you all with this call, so to speak, would be that your new illumination, leadership awakening, and conversion experience is ultimately that you're here to lead and restore new lighthouse leadership for others. So you're going to be really looked at in terms of an Ananias type of leader. And I'm going to talk, just a little bit about that, because that really is, I would say that's your signature calling. So just to kind of sum that up is during this time, you are called to provide what I call the Ananias Illumination Leadership Awakening experience. But let me say that there's an interesting twist to this as well. Though you're here to provide that, but we also have to first clarify what that's going to look like for you on 3 different levels. And that includes your personal level, the professional level, but also the spiritual level as well. And then ultimately being able to combine these different levels of mastery, so to speak, into a cohesive life and leadership mission. And this is going to be part of your new illumination context. So this is how you're actually going to start to reposition your leadership light, your mission, and then ultimately be able to level up your primary influence agenda. So, this, again, I said this is a very exciting time for different shifts like this to be occurring, and for you to start really knowing what your place is in your role. So I want you to take a moment. I'm very imaginary at times, and so I love to bring people through certain processes, and not to get into a process at this point, but I do want you to just imagine that within 3 days that you will meet up with either a few individuals or a tribe of leaders who are Sauls, so to speak, that are going to be converted, or they're at that emerging point of being converted into Apostle Pauls, if you will. And within this preparation, as you're imagining, that you only have a one-shot opportunity to provide this illuminate or illumination awakening experience that I was mentioning. And ultimately, of course, this is going to be about opening the eyes of the blinded leader and connect them to their truth that will ultimately start to convert them into their true calling, as what we're talking about today, being a new illuminate light leader. So just think about this. If you only had 3 days and this was going to occur. So within this 3 day, it's because it's a preparation process. What you have for yourself is you're going to begin to experience your own awakening and awareness of new illumination in the areas that I was mentioning before, in terms of personal, professional, and spiritual mastery. And all of this relates to the context of leadership. But ultimately, it changes the whole trajectory, if you will, and landscape of your entire life. And of course, that's what we choose to lead from, is being that leader in our lives first. And Gina talks, a lot about that in her work, being the leader of your life first, and then being able to lead from that place. So this experience for you is going to help you to better clarify your calling for this phase, and then begin to create the most aligned experiences for this new, if you want to call it a prospective convert, so to speak, because we're talking about tribes that you're here to influence. And as I mentioned, actually in a previous call, how this level of leadership really isn't designed to take an emerging Apostle Paul through his next level of the journey, but you're here just to provide sort of a short and accelerated experience to create the opportunities for a successful jumpstart of this new process. So, and I emphasize that because definitely in helping you to understand what your position is, during this time, is sometimes people can become attached to situations and misinterpret their assignment in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. And when you have individuals who have been the Sauls, they are those ones who are going to actually really have to work that journey out more so themselves, and because they're not in the evolutionary context enough to be able to consistently be with an Ananias, type of leader. So there's a reason why being this Ananias leader is that you're here to provide the experience that gets them the jump start. And that's actually something that Ananias did within the book of Acts with Paul. He was with Paul just a very short window, and it was like to open his eyes and bring him the truth. And then that was pretty much his assignment. And then he was gone. And then the Apostle Paul started on his own journey and definitely had others to contribute. And then he did massive things, But your role at this time will be that you're just going to think about how you will provide this quick experience to accelerate, their process. So on the note of a process, I actually do want to introduce a process right now. And so I want us to be present with your own Damascus Road experience, okay? And this is actually a process that is within my publication, The New Leadership Light on Damascus Road. And so I want to bring this forward now because I believe it's going to be really important to better clarify exactly what I've been talking about and why you need to have your own awakening experience. It doesn't mean like an abrupt experience because you're not a Saul leader. So that's why I made some distinctions earlier, is that the Ananias leader is really the one who meets someone on their Damascus Road experience and then gives them, the guidance to the next level. And that's how you all are being classified at this time, because that's your position for higher illumination. So at this moment, I'm going to ask that everyone take 3 nice deep breaths, please. Okay, so this is the time, if you don't have the note-taking materials with you, you actually do need to have them for this part of this process. So I'm going to provide some trigger prompts in question and statement of intent formats, so to speak. And I want you to really think about this, okay? Because we're being present now with your own Damascus Road experience as an Ananias leader at this point. So ask yourself, what do I need to awaken to in the present? What do I need to awaken to in the present? Just think about that, because we're always having to continuously have an awakening and shifts made for ourselves. Okay. So also ask yourself this question: what required illumination is needed in my life during this time? Or another way to actually phrase that is, what requires illumination in my life during this time? So what requires illumination in my life during this time? So what needs to be illuminated, especially in those three areas that I was mentioning: personal, professional, and spiritual mastery. And the professional comes within your leadership context as well. I mean, they all work together, but you can look at the professional aspect is your leadership mission and calling if you desire. Okay, so just give a few more moments to think about that. Okay. And the next question is, what is my primary leadership level up factor for personal, professional, and spiritual mastery? So this is expanding the awareness of these areas, so to speak, bringing it into more of a cohesive context. So what is my primary leadership level up factor for personal, professional, and spiritual mastery? So I just want to mention, kind of just tying in the last question when it's about the required illumination in your life. And I said to actually focus on those three areas. So whatever came up during that time is this is where you can bring the cohesiveness into how do you put this now into a context, into a factor, so to speak, that encompasses those three areas. I'll give a little bit more time there. Okay. So now I want you to think about the awareness factor. So at this moment, just say, I'm becoming more aware of, and what is that? I'm becoming more aware of. And it could be based on what you've heard so far. What are you becoming more aware of based on what you've heard, based on this process, or maybe some things leading up, to this conference? But the present moment is where the power is. And so good to kind of focus the energy there. So what are you becoming more aware of? Okay. So now I want you to complete this statement. I feel called to shine my new light as a leader by I feel called to shine my new light as a leader by, what does that look like? And give a few more moments. You don't have to overthink anything. Whatever kind of hits you, even if it's just a word or a phrase. Because there's always the opportunity to go back through this process, and I do encourage that. Okay. So I'm being guided to create blank as my new Ananias Illumination Leadership Awakening experience. So I'm being guided to create blank as my new Ananias Illumination Leadership Awakening experience. So let me just give a little context to this. So this could be an evergreen product. It could be a publication or a publication series. It could be seminar series. It could be some type of accelerated experience, and that could be a VIP intensive, some type of 30-day process. It could even look like a 30-day maybe Facebook action group. And if you are going to do something like that, I recommend that you have pre-recorded and pre-done content that the individuals can avail themselves to that content anytime really after your 30-day support experience. But also, I want to bring this up. You can actually use that group if you choose to do that format. This is something I've done. I actually still leverage this. Is you can choose to use the group as really a non-linear list building initiative and have a way to keep them posted on other emerging opportunities after their conversion. Because, you know, even though you won't be really hands-on with them after you've provided that support and it's there for them to level up. But the thing about it is most of them, if not all, will level up and they want to meet and join you in a different context of your leadership. So one of the ways to have good check-in, so to speak, is to just make sure you do have some periodic updates. So you can do that even if you're not really hands-on, you know, so to speak, with them after that 30-day initiative. But you also find that even after, it's interesting, I'm being guided to speak about this as if I need to do a training right here, you know, for that. But you know, basically, you know, there'll be the ones that within the 30 days will actually be ready to level up and move forward into some of the other opportunities or endeavors, you know, that you have. So definitely be aware of that, but just know that what you're going to be providing in terms of their jump start is within a short window. And then if they level themselves up, then certainly if they're still aligned to participate with you moving forward, then yeah, but you actually have that space there to be able to kind of stay connected in the most aligned, harmonious, or balanced way, so to speak. So before concluding and wanting to have a collective conversation about, you know, about this training and just anything else that comes up during this time, is I do want to provide 3 resources that really help to better solidify this experience that you just had. And so the resources are the new Leadership Light on Damascus Road. And again, that is an Illuminate Awakening Journey Journal for repositioning your leadership light, mission, and agenda. And then I have a resource that's called New Light and New Hope, and it's a motivational Q&A journal for new era Illuminate leadership. And then there's the publication. And I do want to mention that actually the new light, Leadership Light on Damascus Road, and the one I'm about to mention, both Gina and Brenda contributed to these publications. So the new Illuminate Leadership Light Factors, it's lighting the shore and leading the new way as an evolutionary lighthouse leaderpreneur. And it is a journal as well. So just wanted to be able to provide these resources because they will help you definitely expand your light and level up and take you through the processes that you need for this particular initiative of your position in leadership during this time. So everyone take a deep breath, please. Okay, so that concludes the opening training. And before we hear from Brenda and her mini talk on awakening your new luminous leadership light and unleashing your magic in the world, certainly want to have a conversation with Gina and Brenda just in terms of the training, and if either one of them want to share anything that came up for them as a demonstration, you know, for others. So yeah, so let's have some conversation, you know, about this, Gina and Brenda.
So that was great. Great training, great process. I love when you take us inside to find answers for ourselves. And that's what really came up for me in this new format that we're moving into. Is it's not a format where others provide you the answers. It's a format where you discover them for yourself. And the answers are different for each one of us. But it really is these processes that you take people through to do that exploration is really the way forward. It's not taking a course and having somebody tell you what a good leader is or how to lead. It is about discovering what that leadership quality is that lives within you, because we all have it. It's all different within us, but we all have that essence of magic within us.
Yes.
That is what differentiates us from leaders in the past that kind of follow that same format. Is every leader moving forward will have their own format.
Right, absolutely. Their own unique template.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be different than, there's no standard template.
That's right.
It really, the work is in letting go of those old perceptions of what leadership looks like, what a good leader looked like in the past world, and really embracing what that means to you to be a good leader. What does that look like from your own inner landscape?
Yes. Oh, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, that was great. That was great. All right, Gina, let's hear from you.
I absolutely agree with you, Brenda. I think you beautifully stated how people are very used to dealing with external triggers, external information, external verification that they're doing something well, for example.
Yeah.
I think people are much less familiar with that inner landscape, that they are looking for the new dimension to be something that they find, that they can physically identify with, when it's so much more about that inner work. And I think, giving people the dimension of personal, professional, and spiritual is so important, because many leaders are used to self-reflection in terms of the role that they do. I think far fewer perhaps concentrate at any length about how they are turning up at a personal level,
right,
and looking after that physical side of their body. And even fewer, I think, consider the spiritual dimension at all.
Right.
And if there is one area, I think that people who are going to have that road to Damascus experience have got to appreciate themselves as a spiritual being.
Absolutely.
This is not necessarily an evidence based in the old sense of the word.
Right.
There's got to be faith. You've got to trust yourself, and that's why the inner work is so important. And because we're going into a new dimension, a new way of being, the things that you have trusted before to tell you that you're doing it okay from the outside, they're not going to work, because they are focused on what has been, not what is to come. And so for me, that inner illumination has to be so much about developing the strength and the courage to really trust your own inner wisdom. Absolutely. And to create that connection with source, which opens the door of possibilities.
The word that kept coming up for me that you've really hit on, Gina, is vulnerability.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself.
Scary, can't it?
Yeah.
To be vulnerable, particularly in the professional context, when leaders think, I've got to be strong and I've got to know all the answers. That's not where we're going.
Right.
No, it's that vulnerability and courage kind of go hand in hand. And that authenticity, like just, what some of these younger generations are looking for is not that expertise as much as it is that authenticity.
Right.
That fact that they can trust what that leader is saying, and they've got a really strong radar for when somebody's pulling the wool over their eyes.
Yes, they do.
And just tapping into that, I'm not perfect, and I'm willing to own that. I'm willing to own the imperfections, or what looks like imperfections. I wouldn't even say that they're imperfections, but by the old standard, they look imperfect.
They're learning opportunities, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think you see them in that way. So long as you do learn from them, then they actually are a good thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, well stated. Well, would either one of you care to share any? You don't have to, but if would either one of you care to share any ahas, from the process or anything around the process that you think would be beneficial to those who are listening?
The question, what requires illumination in my life, was really where a lot of this stuff started coming up, the vulnerability, the courage. But it really tapped me into a more expanded version of me.
Yes.
And that's what's hiding within all of us, is
Absolutely.
what we have allowed ourselves to show to the world is just such a small fraction of who we are.
Right.
And it really comes down to what needs to be illuminated is that expanded you, expanded version of you. And that's where, that's what's going to lead the way forward.
Absolutely. That is the new illumination, isn't it? The expansion of that light from within that comes externally to be that demonstration. And that's part of that metamorphosis that takes place of not just leveling up in the traditional formats that we talked about. And Gina hit on something really important in terms of how the development of the skills and people not really looking at the areas in terms of the spirituality and their personal, aspect, and not really giving a whole lot of thought to that. And so, but something else that you hit on in terms of the new way forward with this level of the inner work. And so that's the only way that people can literally be transformed and evolutionize themselves, is being able to get what's within into, the outer context to ultimately be able to change the outer landscape versus the inner landscape already, have been, re-engineered, so to speak. Yeah. And so that's how you know that we're dealing with a new creation, because when the light that's already within now gets leveled up and repositioned into a newer light context through someone's evolutionary experience, then again, now we're dealing with a new creation and a new order of a vessel coming forward, to be these illuminate lights. So, thank you so much for sharing that. Before I go back over to Gina, was there anything else that you wanted to share from your experience, or it's okay to shift to her?
No, I think that becoming aware of the evolution of the planet, the evolution of our environment, and the safety that provides for this new version of you to come forth is really important, because in the past it wasn't safe for us to reveal too much about ourselves. In this new light, in the new vibration, in the new world that has evolved for us, that safety already exists for that. Absolutely. So being aware of that safety makes it easier to be vulnerable, easier to take that step of courage into something if you're convinced that there's some safety.
I agree. Beautifully stated. Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Gina.
What strikes me is that every time that we do a training, that there is, I work in a journal, that I create one of my own, that there is this leveling up. And I think for me, there's a number of things. I think we live in a society where there's an assumption that you can get to the top. And my awareness is that there is no top.
Exactly.
That actually that
there's only ascending, right?
However high you go,
that's right, exactly.
There's always more and more. I was asked a little while ago, what did I mean by a new era of consciousness? Because these are words that we use, and I was using one of your journals, and in that journal I started to explore what is new level consciousness, and what I wrote in that was very much around the shift from the external landscape into the internal landscape. And what we've been doing today reaffirms that ultimately, yes, the there are external factors that actually affect us.
Yes, definitely.
But ultimately, we as spiritual beings don't need to be in any way limited or contained by what has been. And even though, I believe I'm a limitless being, what today has made me just recognize is that we have to keep visiting ourselves as limitless beings.
That's right.
Because you think you've evolved, and then some of the old stuff creeps back in if you're not careful. And so you have to consistently revisit who you are as a spiritual being. What are you aware of, and being aware of anything that constrains you to be less than your very best self.
That's great. Yeah.
Well stated. What do I feel to be to call to shine my light on as a leader? By helping others recognize that they are only limited by their beliefs, their thoughts, the limitations that they place upon themselves.
Yes, great. Everything that you stated, and Brenda as well, it's a training within itself, right? Definitely. That was magnificent. Yeah, that was magnificent. I really appreciate both of you being vulnerable to share, from some things that came up for you and that you believe would be beneficial, to those who are emerging and leveling up their light, during this time, because there is a significant shift in a distinction between, as we talked about, the new light energy of a leader and just a general leadership lighthouse, perspective. But, during this time, speaking to the vulnerability aspect that you both were mentioning, is that needs to be in demonstration. I believe that you both demonstrated that, magnificently, to be able to share, from what came up for you in the present moment and how you're still continuously, evolving. And something Brenda even mentioned is that she mentioned that she was excited to be here, not only to share in the training, but to be learning as well. And I think that that's just an excellent demonstration, as well. So I wanted to just, mention that. So I want to thank you both. So what we'll do now is we will shift to Brenda now sharing her mini talk, which she wants to bring forth to us today on awakening your new luminous leadership light and unleashing your magic in the world. So looking forward to hearing what Brenda's going to share with us.
Great, thank you. And I want to comment on Gina. Thank you for being as vulnerable and sharing what you thought. What came to mind when you were saying that was I used to cycle, and I used to cycle up a mountain, and I was always like, oh, if I can just get to that next corner, I'll be done. And then you get to the corner and you're going, what? There's another hill here. There's another hill. There's another corner up there. If I can just get to that corner, I'll be done. And that is sort of the old way of leadership, is looking externally, looking outside yourself for those markers that you've actually made it. And it's where the cliche, and I know it's a cliche, but and we've heard so many times that it's not the destination, it's the journey. Yeah. And when I started to really enjoy the work of cycling and it didn't become work anymore, was when I just sat and started looking around and looking at the beauty, which I never saw before, because I was always heading for that next corner so that I could be done. I could reach the top of that mountain. But when you can actually start looking at what is unfolding around you, that's where you start tapping into that magic. Absolutely. That's where you start to enjoy the experience. And when you can have joy in your experience, that's magic in itself. That's everything takes on a different hue when you can get into that point. So when we're talking about illuminating that magic that's within you, that next level, it's really moving out of the mundane world where you're just striving for the next accomplishment, the next, that next corner, the top of the mountain, and really embracing the magic that is around you. And that's how you get into that accelerated energy.
Yes, definitely.
What I find, though, with so many people, and a lot of the work that I do with them is emotion-based. It really is your outlook. It's what emotions you allow to take hold of your life. And so many of our emotions can hijack our life and contract our world rather than expanding, moving us into that expanded version of ourselves, that expansion of the world. So really being aware of where you're allowing your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions to take you, and just reclaiming control of that is what really starts you on this journey.
Yeah.
I thought, so when we're talking about leading from that place of magic or illuminating that magic, it really is that internal landscape that we're talking about. And you have to do, in order to be an authentic leader, you have to do the inner work first. You really have to find that magic, find that light within yourself, shift from that old format into the new format before you can ever authentically lead other people on that journey. And a lot of the work that we're doing with these intentional journals, with even though the three of us kind of approach them from slightly different topic areas, the process is very much the same of doing that inner exploration, finding those answers. What does a good leader look like to you? Who do you really want to be in this world? As the new world unfolds, and we're seeing this evolution of the planet, this evolution of leadership, your purpose is going to evolve as well. You might have thought that you knew what you were here for and been really grounded in that. And then all of a sudden the ground disappears from under you and, you're floating kind of in the middle of nowhere. And just to find that new purpose, that new reason that you're here, how you're going to contribute to the evolution of the planet, the evolution of humanity is really a critical piece of this. And it oftentimes I would have to say most of the time now, it's not even going to be related to what you thought your purpose was before. It is, AliNICOLE talks about the caterpillar having to totally disintegrate before a new evolved creature can show up. And that's very much the same with our leadership. We have to let go of all of those things that we thought made us a good leader in the past, and allow something completely new to come up from within us. It lives within us. That is that magic that is held within the core of our being. And we talk about the spiritual part of it. That really is the spirit. That magic comes from the spirit, that light that is inside you, that inspiration is really in spirit. It comes from that spiritual side of you, allowing that to come up. It's natural. It's almost like when you put a cork into water, its natural way of being is to float to the top. We have to actually put effort into keeping it suppressed. And that's what's been happening to us in the past world. That truth of who we are has not been allowed to rise to the top and shine, because we've been holding it down with false premises. And it's the work that I do with people that really has to happen before they can tap into that magic, they can illuminate that new leadership style, is to get rid of all those things that are holding them back in that old energy. So I've got 2 publications that kind of precede the work that I do with people in illuminating their magic, igniting their magic, and illuminating their magic. And that is just preparing them for this acceleration. So the first one, I take them through a basically 4-step process, looking at what what they're resisting, what they're attached to in the old world, how to align, how to release all of those attachments and align to that new higher vibration energy, and how to respond to that, how to allow that energy to come in and just evolve us for ourselves. And then we're ready to kind of join into that acceleration and reclaim that spirit that lives within us. So that's the first book, and that's called Prepare for Your Accelerated Awakening. And that's really shifting from resisting to responsibility for that higher purpose in the world. That sets the foundation for you to move into that higher vibration. The next journal that I have is really the next step forward. Once that work has been done and you've been prepared, it really, you move into the embracing that accelerated awakening and moving beyond the safety to flow into higher contribution in the new worlds. Both of these are those intentional journals. So they really don't give you the answers. They help you. They give you the questions that you take inside to find the answers for yourself. So in the Embrace Your Accelerated Awakening, we really look at where are you? Where are you now when you're starting this new journey? What attachments do you have? What belief systems, what thought processes still remain that aren't going to serve you in moving into that new leg of your journey? And then we look at who are you? Like, you know where you're starting that journey from, but who is it that is taking that journey? And then finally, what once you've identified those, who you are, who you want to be you with, those are really critical questions that we have to ask when we're moving into this new energy, when we're revealing that magic that lives within ourselves. And then from that point, then you look into the possibilities and opportunities of what will you create in this new world. So those really set you up for illuminating your magic, where you can start to identify that new purpose, that those unique and magical gifts that you hold deep within you. Every one of us is different, like I said before. How can you open new channels of communication so the messages that you get are coming from that higher realm, that higher vibration, that come from higher aspects of yourself? How do you access spiritual guidance? How do you claim that rightful flow of abundance that is waiting for us? This is part of keeping the cork suppressed, is we keep ourselves from experiencing the abundance that is our birthright and is just waiting for us to claim it. And that's where we really start to tap into that natural feeling of joy for life. And life itself takes on a whole different perspective. That's where we can really tap into enjoying every element of our lives along that way, and not just looking for how do I get to the next success or the next mountain peak. So that is, I do that through a 2-day intensive. Once we've gone through the Prepare for the Accelerated Awakening and Embracing the Accelerated Awakening, we move into our magic intensives. And we can do those in either 1-day intensives, which is igniting your magic and then moving into illuminating your magic, or a 2-day intensive that just covers both of those aspects.
Wonderful.
That's about it for me.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, can feel the magic, can feel your passion too. For being able to share and and communicate that, and it was very important for you to definitely express it the way that you did. And something that I really loved, how when you were sharing about starting to illuminate the inner landscape, obviously, because then it can transform the external landscape, and how how that is very important, because you can't actually have a magical experience externally if that magic from within is not discovered in terms of like being on a treasure hunt for you in your inner landscape or so, to dig that up and to find it, and then to change that interior so that the exterior can produce this leadership lifestyle that is really required for the new way. And as you even were mentioning during when we were having conversation even around the training, the opening training that I did, is about the new way forward with being able to dig up those answers, within. And I really love how you shared about just really what is our natural states of beingness and what that should look like. And I believe that was really important for others to understand that, because sometimes no matter how evolved we can be, sometimes people actually don't have a context around new definition approaches to everyday concepts, or just not even aware in terms of what this expansion is really about. And so I think that you did a really great job of being able to shine the light on that, in terms of here are the things that are going to have to be released from the old world system and systematic way of thinking, and now moving into your own inner wisdom that is going to then tell you how you show up in this new world, and going through, as you mentioned, the preparation phase in an accelerated format, and then the embracing those aspects. That's when the journey of the magical path leads to being ignited in that way, and being, courageous and intuitive, all the things that, you definitely focus on. It's just empowering. I thought that was really great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Gina, you have any words that you would like to?
As always, Brenda offers such great wisdom and such amazing opportunities to help people find their inner magic. Yeah. I love the metaphor of the mountains. I've been walking in the Mendip Hills, and they're one summit after another, and the learning to enjoy the journey. Mm-hmm. When you're focusing on the road because you want to head down, and you're pushing on to get to a place, rather than enjoying things. I was met a friend today, and we were talking about how important it is for people to rediscover the joy of living. Notice the beauty around. There's lots of awful things happening, but there is such amazing kindness and such wonderful things to see and experience. And if we're not careful, we can fail to find those along our journey. And that's not what we're here for.
Right. I cycled this mountain probably once or twice a week for years.
Yeah.
And it was always, like you said, head down, pushing. And finally, one time I went to heck with that, and I could not believe the beauty around me. And yet I had spent probably 10 years going up and down that mountain, either in cars or on my bike. There's a ski hill at the top of it. Yeah. And I'd been up there hundreds of times, and I never, ever saw the beauty that was around me until one time I decided to do that.
You don't have to live, you live in a beautiful place, but I was talking to a client who lives on the outskirts of London. And one of his pieces of homework was to go and walk for 15 minutes from his home in suburbia, but with his eyes open and aware to the beauty. And he said, I've lived there for 40 years, and I have seen things that I didn't know were there.
They're there, exactly.
And
that's the luminous journey, right? That's
the magic,
illumination. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter where you are. There is beauty if you choose to look for it. There is joy if you choose to appreciate it.
And I like what you said, your eyes open. This is the waking up that's starting to happen with the isolation that the world has been through. And this is what has caused people to go, there's got to be more than this. And so many people are starting to wake up and see the world so differently than they did when they went into hibernation.
Very much.
So it's it's an exciting time.
Oh, it is, yes. And I would definitely say that, what you shared, obviously just expounds upon the work that you do in terms of awakening leaders more consciously. And it is important to have the conscious awakening versus just an awakening. And even going back to what was talked about within the training with the Damascus Road experience and people having these awakenings as leaders, but in the work that you do in terms of helping them to awaken more consciously, because if you don't actually have a conscious journey, then you really can't have your eyes open or receive the higher guidance and illumination to, what this magic is, because you'll miss the magic because you're not awake. And so if you are not awake and really conscious of the journey, and something that, I teach about really being present with the process and how people are having experiences, but they're actually not, in the experience, even though it's happening all around them. But when we can be more conscious in the leadership aspect and being awake in that way, that's what ultimately then produces that, that illumination. And then it just, adds to all of the other components that you were talking about that really does make up this luminous leadership, experience, and being able to be, luminous within the light context. And that, again, is something, as you mentioned, is what people discover for themselves. It's not a template to say, here's how you do this to become this way, even though there are some core principles, fundamentals, so to speak, that definitely help, to assist with that. But it is exactly what you have been talking about, and what Gina just mentioned is about, people have to be conscious to understand that there are things all around you that you are missing constantly. But when you can actually go through your process and awaken, as Brenda teaches, in a more conscious way, then your leadership in life and your mission can't help but be more illuminate. And then that is ultimately, that joy is where that magic resides, that inner joy. And that's what's unleashed ultimately into the world, for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's magic.
That is the magic. Exactly. That is the magic. And you definitely have created that magical momentum, for the leaders, and I'm very proud of you because I really enjoyed what you shared. So valuable. So, Gina, let's now, on the note of not accepting just any template, that is given, to us, let's hear about the Enlightened Soul Mission Blueprint of a new illumination leader.
Thank you. Enlightened leaders have always had an important role to play. And a big part of that has been the requirement to be truly authentic and to know your purpose. And that element has not changed. However, as we move forward, we're in a period where there is a requirement for leaders to embody the greater expansion of themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think for many people, recognizing who they are as a leader is something that they've not thought about. They've thought about the job and they've thought about who they're leading, but they've not thought about what sort of leader am I. Right. And it takes things to a whole new level of self-knowledge. This new illumination leader, as one, you're required to get beyond any past conditioning and limiting beliefs. And I know Brenda spoke about that. Mm-hmm. It's quite hard, I think, for people to discount the expectations that they think others have of them, and also to dismiss the expectations they have of themselves. Because when you stay within those, it's almost a straitjacket. It simply is too restricting. And one of the things to recognize about this new type of leadership, this new times we're in, that things are continuously expanding. And if you're not growing, expanding with them, then you're going to be left in the old paradigm. And even when things you think, well, I've moved and I've shifted and I've grown and I've expanded, well, just like the mountain that Brenda was cycling up, you are just going to the next peak and the next peak, and you are never finished. I think there's a danger. So many people make copies or slightly adjusted versions of what other people are suggesting based on their intellectual understanding, rather than by tuning into their inner wisdom to identify the true essence of their calling. And so, if you like, it almost is a 2D version rather than a 3-dimensional version of who you're about as a leader. It requires huge courage and commitment to go within, and not just the once. I think lots of people think, well, I've done that, been there, got the t-shirt. But the reality is you're never done. This is a lifetime learning opportunity. And no matter where you are today, I think Brenda and I will attest to, having worked with AliNICOLE, that we are constantly being challenged. And I know AliNICOLE constantly challenges herself to go within and to grow and to become not just the butterfly, but the eagle. And I suspect that somewhere along the line, there's going to be the Sputnik or the rocket, because it's ever expanding. So communing with inner wisdom and creating a connection, a greater connection, an ever greater connection to source is a fundamental of becoming a new Illuminate leader as we move into the future. Because it's only then that you can discover for yourself what's unique about your purpose and customize it from that wisdom. So it's not a cookie cutter exercise. It's not, I want to do good in the world. Our purpose comes from the blueprint of our soul. Yeah. It's as individual as our fingerprints. It's unique. But unless you illuminate it, you're never going to have that enlightenment. And that will only come from that consistently just searching for, how do I become even more aware, even more conscious, even more illuminated? That doesn't mean to say that you're not to start with, but there is a brighter light. There is a greater expansion awaiting you. So, why is it so important? What are enlightened leaders here to illuminate during this time? And, why is it so important for them to discover it for themselves, discover what's unique and customize it? I think recognizing the importance of soul enlightenment for leaders and why that unique blueprint is so unique is vital. One of the things that we're seeing at the moment are people who have the capacity to be great leaders, who are getting caught up in other people's PR and the hype, and they're creating a sense of false purpose, which comes from the lower vibration of ego. You were talking about that earlier, AliNICOLE. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they're leading others along a dark path. The issue for me is that when you are leading from your true, authentic soul's purpose, that can't happen, because your true soul purpose can only lead you into the light. It can only be for the greater good. It can only be about the connection between us rather than the division. It's all too easy to assume our life purpose and mission is based on the traditional frameworks of others, which identify doing sort of good works. But I ask you to ask yourself, if you're leading from your soul, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. Or are you just following the common mission? Because if you are following the commission, then you're not a leader, you're a lemming. Mm. Doing so takes things down to the pure elements of the constituent parts, and it comes from a place of purity, love, and light. And even when your sense of purpose comes from a good place, unless you allow yourself to do that inner work, to see the light in all its glory, you're basing everything you do on a limited model. Operating from your true soul blueprint expands your potential, to make a positive difference in the world exponentially. I thought about how can I demonstrate this in a way that's easy to understand? And in simple terms, I want you to think about a small house that's built on an estate. They're all built to the same plan. And although their front doors may be different, and there may be different styles of window and gardens, they're all built to the same basic design. They're nice enough. However, they pale into insignificance when they're compared to a bespoke architect-planned house designed specifically to your blueprint. You know, how much storage do you want? How many bathrooms do you want? Where do you want them arranged? Do you want it 1 story, 2 stories, or 3? When it's to your blueprint, you create the design. And, you know, in many ways, it's like building a house because there are so many different elements to you. Each element could be a different room. Those elements group together on a different floor. But ultimately, you'll never know unless you're prepared to do the work and look. So what is required for creating a new landscape? Well, there is no doubt that we are living at a time of great change. In reality, it doesn't matter whether we're in the middle of a crisis or not, because well, my belief is the function of an enlightened leader is to light the way forward, to explore the new and higher dimension. And once we've explored that, the next new higher dimension. It's not a one-time thing. It's a consistent evolution and requires leaders who communicate with their inner wisdom and soul so that they can continue to light the way. They're here to be a marker to show the way for others. They're here to help others recognize and develop their potential, so much of which has been unused. But I think the most important thing for people to recognize is that they're here to explore the higher dimension, a hitherto unknown territory. We are going into the unknown, and that requires courage and commitment. I believe that they're here to pierce the darkness of the unknown, to illuminate the ways for others to become knowledgeable and in turn light the way for others so they too become knowledgeable about themselves and the unknown, and they can then do the same for other people. You know, you might say, well, how do I do it? You know, what's a basic template that I can use in order to do the inner work? And I think it's definitely time for leaders to be fully present. You are the light in the darkness. So it's important that you provide others with a sense of safety, that you become that beacon of light and hope to others. Fear breeds fear, and you've only got to watch the news to know that there's so much fear, dissension in the world. And those who come from a place of anxiety and fear are unresourced. They're unable to see solutions and as a result become victims to circumstance. And I believe one of the vital roles as an enlightened Illuminate leader is that you can create a sense of hope and possibility. And that can feel daunting when life is challenging and you're aware of the dangers of becoming a Pollyanna, blind hope, very different to conscious hope. So I've created a journal. It's called It's Time to Become a Beacon of Light and Hope. Can you see that properly there?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you quite literally a step-by-step way of being. It uses quotes from very well-known leaders in history who have in their time been a beacon of light and hope. And it allows you to explore what hope means to you and how you can become that beacon of light and hope for others. There is no doubt in my mind that one of the most important and useful ways of discovering your unique blueprint purpose is through journaling. They can support your journey of discovery and what your soul wants to communicate and do it in a safe way. It can feel daunting when somebody says, find your inner light, and you think, oh, where's that? I don't know where I put the bulb. But when you've got a journal where it gives you questions and trigger points, it gives you the opportunity to discover what your blueprint is. what your innermost thoughts are. One caveat, you do it without judgment. Whatever comes onto the page needs to be released because it's trying to tell you something. And so I've created many journals, and I'd like to share two of them with you. The Enlightened Authentic Leader is one that I'd like to share with you, okay? And the reason I want to share that with you is that authentic leaders have an absolute commitment to their own evolutionary journey and to supporting others to do the same. And Enlightened Authentic Leadership, the intentional journal is there to help you accelerate, expand, and deepen your evolution. You know, there is a need to explore your inner self and to tap into the limitless of your potential. And the third journal I'd like to share with you, I always find the camera difficult and go the wrong way with the camera because it's the opposite way. Yeah. And that's the Enlightened Limitless Leadership. And it explores the need for a different type of leadership, one that comes from a place of integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what's right. And it's there to help you evolve and to take radical responsibility for who you are as a leader and to discover your divine blueprint as a leader. So, you know, resistance is futile. It keeps you stuck and makes you play small. It doesn't only limit you, but it actually limits all of those people that you're here designed to help. And so I would say to you, it is time to take that step into the unknown, to be a leader and not a lemming. It's not like jumping off the cliff and following the others over the cliff. It is about looking up and expanding your horizon into this brave new world and being prepared to stand up and to illuminate the way for others.
Yes.
Love it. Thank you.
That was magnificent. Oh, that was just brilliant. that was just brilliant. Oh, wow. That, Gina, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Just every word uttered was just amazing. And I love the clarification and the breakdown, the distinctions in terms of, you know, what an enlightened leader in this Illuminate format, shifting, you know, a basic template of what that should look like, or what the characteristics are, I should say. And it's important to talk about those characteristics so that, you know, within this newer format, others do understand, even if there's distinctions from the older or current vibration of it to the leveling up, you know, in this. And I think you did, you know, such a great job. So many, just a whole treasure chest. I just, you know, when both you and Brenda, you know, we get together and, you know, I just hear from both of you, it is magical within itself. And certainly what Brenda was sharing definitely, you know, ignites even more of the courageousness that you were even talking about in terms of when they're going within and they are, you know, discovering this inner blueprint from that wisdom. And I love your analogy in terms of the estate and being able to, you know, just imagine themselves, you know, being a certain type of home, you know, it's on that property and just all the expansiveness. That's the one thing that definitely kept elevating through what you were sharing is I felt the expansion and the ascending. And I'm sure Brenda probably, you know, felt that energy too, you know, in terms of that. But I can't even say enough about just, like I said, how great that was and the resources, you know, provided, you know, just stellar. Definitely will help others to bring out that authenticity that you're mentioning. And ultimately that leads to this limitlessness and this leading from the soul and having that template to be extracted and then guiding others through a process where they guide themselves, you know, through a process of that discovery of that illumination, that discovery of the soul's purpose, so that they don't fall into the custom tradition of leadership blueprints, you know, and can be able to know what they're really here to do. So I just thought that was so brilliant. And it's like, wow, I have to follow this, huh? You know,
I think that when you talked about that ever greater connection with Source, kind of said it all. Because in that is encapsulated that limitlessness.
Yes.
Because and it's true. It's an infinite resource for people, and the more you explore it, it's like that saying that the more I learn, the less I know. The more you explore it, the more you experience the expansiveness of that resource, but that directly reflects the expansiveness that you are as a part of that resource. Yeah. So that was awesome. And again, AliNICOLE touched on it, but I loved your house analogy.
Thank you.
Because, and the one piece that stuck out for me is when somebody really personalizes a space, it can be the exact same space, decorated the exact same way, but they bring in their light and their magical touch to it. Yeah. And it shows up as a completely different place. My grandson said to me one time at my house, he says, "Your house has the greatest energy in it, Grandma. And I don't even believe in that stuff," he says. But he could tap into it, and he does. We have these interesting conversations, but he said, it's just got the best energy in it. And that's when you actually let that light from inside yourself shine and illuminate that reality of who you are and what you're here for. That's what comes out of that. So.
Absolutely. Oh, that was well stated, Brenda. And I want to sort of piggyback, off of that, as well. And going back to the illumination of the connection of Source, and because the soul of Source, that is the true soul's template, right?
Yes.
The true, blueprint, and being able to lead from that place, that source, the soul of your source, or the source of your soul, vice versa, is that you do have to ultimately have that connection. And as Brenda stated so brilliantly also, is that within that does encompass the whole of everything. And that is where that limitless expansion is there. And that's why I could feel through everything that Gina was sharing was the expansion, giving birth to more expansion, giving birth to more expansion, giving birth to more expansion. And you could just feel that just going out, and that is the newer energy and vibration that people have to move in. And when they go on the journey, the inner journal journey, so to speak, and then they bring that expansion forth, then, this goes back to what Brenda was talking about too, and ultimately unleashing the magic, and that limitless potential, that limitless magic that just comes forth. And when you illuminate the soul in this way, you can't help but be that true, authentic leader that Gina was talking about. It's impossible not to exude that level of illumination when you're leading from the truth of who you are, the soul of who you are, that connection to Source. I feel I'm gearing up for a sermon here, so I better segue into I better segue into the next phase of this. But I just, oh my goodness, that I just loved all of this. Those, just the brilliancy of what you both shared, just pure excellence and magnificence. And you got me fired up. So yes, some illumination here. So thank you both. Just beyond excellent. So with that, I know I'm going to provide sort of a mini keynote, and really, I believe you all really provided it actually. So I won't say a whole lot around this, but I do want to be able to conclude in terms of providing, if you want to call it that, not necessarily exit message in a sense, because it is just a continuation, and then I know we'll have a little bit more conversation, and then I'll share some some next steps, and then Gina will, definitely conclude us after we have some final words. So, so this experience in terms of how we are rising, and this whole conversational training conference is really about being able to rise and be able to shine forth, shine this new light of illumination. And that's what it's all about. And that's what's been demonstrated so far is the setup for this experience, because life is all about experiences. And that's what you bring to the world. It's who you are as a leader. I show up as a statement, an expression, and an experience, and ultimately, an encounter. And I believe that is what we all are here to demonstrate. But in order to really demonstrate that, we have to be able to do exactly what these queens have been talking about in terms of courageousness. And I believe that's where we rise. And then within the rising, because of the journey we've had, then that's where we lead from, that position. And ultimately, that is where it's going to broadcast, if you will, and display the brilliancy of this light that is really ready to shine forth. I'm like super pumped right now because they've got me. they pumped me up with everything that they stated. So let me talk about rise, lead, and shine forth as this new Illuminate leader. And so there are just 5 areas that I want us to be present with. And I'm going to share this from just a collective perspective at first, and then I want us to be present in the individuality energy. So these 5 areas are really about the power of our rise. Can you feel that? The power of our rise as these new Illuminate leaders. And then the next area is about the position of how we lead. And we've actually been talking about that. The position of how we lead. Feel into the power of that. Feel into that. Us collectively, the position, us positioning ourselves from rising in that power. And then the next is about the projection of how we shine forth, what we are giving off, how this illumination is being projected and reflected in terms of who we are here to impact and just ultimately the world. And then next is about the purpose of our new Illuminate leadership agenda. Okay, and we've been talking about that. The purpose of our new Illuminate leadership agenda. And then the next one is about the potential of new possibilities for a promising now and future. And I'm going to go back through these, but I'm just sharing these because I want us to just be present in the collective embodiment. And I'm just thinking, being here with Gina and with Brenda, and just the power of what we bring together and what we do when we come together, and our passion to serve and to be able to shine our illuminate light for others. And so it's just incredible. And so just being present with that in just the collective energy. So let's take a moment, and just going to invite you just to take a nice deep breath and just be present with our collective intention. Okay. And so now we're actually going to be present with the individuality aspect of this. So I want you to just think about the power of your own rise, right? So be present, the power of my rise. Just sit with that. Feel into that. The power of my individuality, my unique rising. And now I want you to be present with your position. So say the position of how I lead, the position of how I lead, just be with that. Be present with that. The position of how I lead, how I'm leading, because I'm rising in this new energy and I'm taking my position as this new lighthouse energy. Now I want you to be present with the projection, of all that has come before. What's going to actually shine forth? So you can just be with the energy of the projection of how I will shine forth. What am I projecting? Like a projector, The projector can only reflect what's, put down, before it in order to demonstrate and show, whether in a classroom or meeting room or whatever. It can only project what's being put in or before it to be able to give an illumination. What is it going to reflect back? So the projection of how I will shine forth. Be present with that. That's such a rich energy, because it's so powerfully present. It's a right now energy. Then I want you to be present with the purpose, right? So the purpose of my new Illuminate leadership agenda. Let's be present with that. The purpose of my new Illuminate leadership agenda. And now I want you to be present with the potential of new possibilities for my promising now and future. So the potential of or for my promising now and future. This is about these new possibilities. Oh, the potential of that. Having to contain myself over here, because just the energy alone of that just can skyrocket all of us out of here. It's powerful. Just be present with that. Okay. And so now there's a collective statement of intent. And I know that I had you to be first present with our collective energy, together. And now I want to bring this sort of into some cohesiveness within a statement. And you are demonstrating this, of making this statement of intent for yourself, but it ultimately is what you're here to bring to the masses. And so it just brings together all of what we've been present with, both collectively and your unique individuality energy. So I don't want you to try to write this statement down. I just want you to be present with it, and you can say it, to yourself. And it's kind of a question. And I'll have you to think about it. So what is my powerful position and projection of the greater purpose that my new leadership light will reflect to others about their potential for new possibilities for the present and a more promising future? And I'm going to repeat this 3 times. So what is my powerful position and projection of the greater purpose that my new leadership light will reflect to others about their potential for new possibilities for the present and a more promising future. So what is my powerful position and projection of the greater purpose that my new leadership light will reflect to others about their potential for new possibilities for the present and a more promising future? So just think about that. Because you will develop your own statement of intent from this. In the next upcoming days and weeks and months, this will continue to evolve and expand. And so on the note of that, I just want to quickly share in terms of the rise, lead, and shine forth as a new Illuminate leader and what your charge is. And it's simple, yet it's very significant. Your charge during this time will be to embrace what I call being your signature role as a required lighthouse leader. Hear me when I say this. A required lighthouse leader. And this is in the context of the new energy for new illumination. So you are not optional. You are a requirement in this new era. And the power of your individual rise that you are just being present with, and also our collective rise that we've been present with. This is what is going to set this world ablaze. This is where we become incandescent influences. And see, when we're in this element of ourselves, we are the ones, we are illuminating this new leadership example. And this is going to, hear me when I say this, change the historical and the future landscape. Because we've been talking about landscapes today, the internal landscape that ultimately lead to the external landscape being able to shift. When this happens, then we are creating this global leadership landscape change. And this is going to continue throughout all generations. That's how powerful our rise, our individual rise and our collective rise has this potency of power. That the potential that's within it is beyond what you can comprehend. And during this time that we've been together, it really has been about expanding into the next level of understanding the comprehension for this new illumination process is being a leader and being the lighthouses that we're here to be in this new format. So as I mentioned, you are required, not optional. And what will be taking place is that we are going to be operating in this duality, functionality, in a sense. It's really, it's a divine duality, is what I call it. I have different levels of the divine duality metaphors that I play off of. But in this case, this divine duality is about us sharing the living light leadership legacy that we're here to be demonstrating while we are obviously still in this physical format. But the other strand of that, if you will, is also about continuing that, and that's leading the continuation of that legacy when we are no longer on this side of the journey. And this is what embodies the true essence of the words that actually come from the album Fame. So if you all recall, you know, the movie and the show Fame, and I actually want to share some lyrics from the theme song, the primary theme song, and it's called I'm Going to Live Forever, because this is what collectively our living light leadership legacy that then continues, the one we're demonstrating now and the one that's going to continue. So it just lives on. So I want to read, just share some of the the main chorus, context. It says, remember my name, fame. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to learn how to fly high. I feel it coming together. People will see me and cry, fame. I'm going to make it to heaven. Light up the sky like a flame. Fame. I'm going to live forever. Baby, remember my name. Remember, 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 remember. So again, everything that has been shared, this is why we rise. This is why we will rise and lead and shine forth, and not just shine forth in any generic way. As what we're here to do and bring is be the new Illuminate leaders. And again, because we are required, but not only are we required, we are remarkable. And as the lyrics of I'm Going to Live Forever just encapsulated, that we are also rememberable. So I want you to just sit with that for a moment. Required, remarkable, and rememberable. And I can tell you this, our flames, so to speak, our flames of fame will live forever. It's impossible for that continuation not to be that living, breathing legacy throughout all generations when we show up in this new way. So as in concluding, I just want to say, so now let us do as John Wesley stated, that I'm going to set myself on fire and people come to watch me burn. And as these new Illuminate lighthouse leaders that are shining forth, we will be the very expression and representation of one of my favorite songs is from the classic movie Pete's Dragon, that is these new lighthouse, new Illuminate lighthouse leaders. We're going to be the candles on the water in this new era. So everyone take a nice deep breath, please. And this is how we rise, lead, and shine forth as a new Illuminate leaders. So thank you.
Thank you, AliNICOLE.
Hello. Thank you. We come together to have some collective discussion, and then I'll share some opportunities, and then we can have, closing words, and then have Gina to conclude us. So just thank you both. I just
thank you.
So you are welcome. I think that your keynote there kind of just wrapped it all up and put the bow on it.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just really put the context.
Me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Should I go ahead? Do we want to have any further discussion, or Gina, you have anything you want to share in terms of that, and then I can share the opportunity, and then we can conclude?
I think really we've probably said it all, but I would just like to reiterate that your charge is for us to embrace the signature role as a received lighthouse leader in the context of the new energy. And I think that if you take on that charge, then everything that we've talked about today is there to support you in that journey. Just to say, don't delay. Take action and do it consistently, because you're needed.
Oh, absolutely. And we definitely are the requirements for sure. And that can be emphasized enough, that we understand that charge. And I'm so glad you brought that up, is that, yes, we are required. And requirement means that we are an option. And that's why we've been here to share what we shared today, in this conversational training conference format so that they can really feel that sense of requirement, but have the confidence and that courageousness to be able to move forward, you know, in the embodiment of this new light, individually and collectively. So I want to quickly share next level opportunities. And the next level opportunities, and this is collective work that we are doing together. And as I talked about earlier about the Ananias New Illumination Leadership context. And so we're going to be offering what I'm calling the new Ananias New Illumination Leadership Factor Action Group. And also, too, we have a conference series coming up that is the new Illuminate Leadership Voices, because it's going to be very important that after you've had this journey, that now it's time to share your Illuminate voice in many formats, whether it be writing, speaking, just a lot of different contexts. But you want to be an Illuminate factor through your communications. And so we have a series that will be coming up with that. Also, the mentioned publications within this conference, those links will be within the description, as well as additional information, you know, about us, and any offers that were mentioned, you know, as well will be there. So I know you all said that the keynote pretty much wrapped up the experience, but if you do want to share any other, you know, closing words before, you know, Gina concludes, something that, you know, I will share, I guess just as my own parting word is, it is really about the expansiveness and really the embodiment, that you really have to embrace this as your truth, because you are here to be this new light, because that new light is already within you, and it's just ready to be illuminated. And everything that has been shared today, you have the opportunity to maximize it and to multiply all of what you've heard. You know, they say that a mustard seed is really small and tiny. You plant it, but it is massive and crops when it's harvest time. And so anything that you take and you allow it to be the mustard seed within you, or the mustard seed, and allow it to multiply and expand, just think about how bright your light is going to be, how illuminate you're going to be, how impactful you're going to be. Things that are simple but yet significant, and being the required vessels that you are during this time. Yeah, you're here to set this world ablaze. And I certainly believe that what has been shared here today is not only going to help you do that to start your fire, but you're going to continue to fan your own flame and keep allowing that fire to expand, that passion. And then you're going to, as Brenda mentioned about igniting, you're going to ignite others to do the same. And so I just want to just say it's time to go shine forth and be the illuminate vessels and lighthouse leaders that you're here to be. So Brenda, if you have nothing else, I'll just turn it over to Gina.
I have nothing else. You summed it up very nicely there. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, thank you. And thank you both.
Thank you. Okay, so if you have been drawn to this, and if you have been engaged in this process, you will recognize that just like the acorn has within it the capacity to grow into a huge oak tree and to spread many millions of acorns during its lifetime, you have the capacity to become an illuminate leader. In fact, I'd say you have the responsibility to do that. You are a requirement, but you can't do this in a half-hearted way. You can't be a slightly illuminated leader. You have to be, we've talked about the demonstration, you have to be authentic, you have to walk your talk. and take responsibility moment by moment for how you show up. What we are here to do is to offer you things to support, to guide, to encourage you, at times to give you the kick that you need to get moving. But ultimately, it's down to you. You can be part of this amazing expansion and make a difference and leave a global legacy that will be here long after we depart this world. Or you can be an observer. You know, if you go to be a spectator at a sport, it's a very different experience to actually being part of that sport and winning the gold medal. And I would say that you are a gold medalist if you choose to be. But if you sit passively and wait for somebody to do it for you, nothing's going to change. And you will end looking in on something, wishing that you'd been part of it. Mm. And so I would say to you, it does take courage. You don't have to do it on your own. We are here to help. And there's lots of opportunities for you to have support and help. But be brave. Step into this new version of yourself. And actually, when you do, what you will do is recognize that you are an all-powerful being when you are listening to your inner wisdom and you are making that close and ever closer connection to source. So thank you for being with us. Do take action. Don't hang about. Recognize your own value and step into being the Illuminate leader that you have the potential to be. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye now.